April 1945. Berlin. A Waffen-SS Nordland volunteer crouches in rubble near Hermannplatz, gripping a PPSh-41 Soviet submachine gun with a hand-carved German grip. His MP40, the weapon he was issued, leans against debris behind him, abandoned. Around him, other German defenders carry the same Soviet weapons, their distinctive 71-round drum magazines instantly recognizable. A German radio transmission intercepts. "Hold fire. Our men have drums." The battle has become so confused that Germans must identify friendlies by their captured Soviet weapons. By April 1945, an estimated 10,000 captured PPSh-41s are in German hands across all fronts. Hundreds fight inside Berlin itself. This is the story nobody tells. The Soviet PPSh-41, derided by Wehrmacht officers as crude, primitive, and mass-produced garbage, became so superior to Germany's MP40 that German soldiers risked their lives to capture them. Waffen-SS units stockpiled Tokarev ammunition specifically to keep their captured PPShs firing. One SS Sturmman wrote in a letter found posthumously, "I would trade 3 MP40s for 1 Russian drum gun." The MP40 was precision-engineered, beautifully machined, expensive to manufacture. The PPSh-41 was stamped steel, welded together by unskilled workers, designed for mass production. On paper, the German gun should dominate. In reality, German soldiers threw away their superior weapons to fight with Soviet junk. Before we reveal why crude Soviet engineering beat German precision, hit that subscribe button hard. Drop a like and comment which WW2 weapon surprised you most. This channel exposes engineering truths that rewrite history. Now let me show you why simplicity wins wars. 1940 Germany's Wehrmacht storms across Europe with the MP38 and its refined successor, the MP40. These submachine guns represent everything German engineering stands for: precision machining, excellent ergonomics, and sophisticated design. Manufactured by Irma Werke using traditional metalworking techniques, each MP40 requires approximately 60 hours of skilled labor and costs roughly 60 Reichsmarks. Expensive, but worth it for a weapon German propaganda calls the finest submachine gun in the world. The MP40 fires 9 by 19 mm parabellum ammunition at 500 to 550 rounds per minute from a 32-round box magazine. The weapon weighs 8.9 pounds loaded, features a folding stock for vehicle crews and paratroopers, and uses a straight blowback operation that's reliable and predictable. German soldiers carry it into Poland, France, Yugoslavia, and Greece, where it performs admirably. Against enemies equipped with bolt-action rifles, the MP40 provides devastating close-range firepower. Then Operation Barbarossa begins on June 22, 1941. 3 million German soldiers invade the Soviet Union, expecting to crush Soviet resistance within months. They encounter the PPSh-41 almost immediately. The weapon is everywhere, issued not just to specialist troops but to entire Red Army units. German intelligence estimates Soviet production at a few thousand units. The reality is closer to 50,000 per month and accelerating. The PPSh-41 Pistolet Pulemiot Spagina, designed by Georgy Spagin, represents Soviet design philosophy at its most pragmatic. When Nazi Germany invaded, Soviet industry faced catastrophic disruption. Factories were being evacuated eastward, skilled workers were conscripted, and sophisticated manufacturing became impossible. Spagin designed the PPSh-41 to address this reality. A submachine gun that could be manufactured by unskilled labor using stamped metal parts and simple welding. The weapon's receiver is stamped from sheet steel, a process that takes minutes instead of the hours required for machining. The barrel is chrome-lined for durability and corrosion resistance. The barrel jacket, that perforated cylinder surrounding the barrel, is simply a rolled and welded steel tube. No precision machining, no complex operations. The entire weapon can be produced in approximately 7.3 hours of labor time, compared to the MP40's 60 hours. Cost per unit, roughly 5 Soviet rubles, a fraction of the MP40's expense. German soldiers' first encounters with the PPSh-41 generate contradictory impressions. The weapon looks crude compared to the beautifully finished MP40. The stamped steel construction seems primitive. Soviet troops sometimes carry them with wooden drum magazines that appear ancient compared to sleek German box magazines. But when those PPSh-41s open fire, German infantry discover something terrifying. The Soviet weapon fires at 900 rounds per minute, nearly double the MP40's rate, from either 35-round box magazines or massive 71-round drum magazines that provide sustained firepower German submachine gunners cannot match. The tactical implications become clear during the first winter. Soviet infantry, equipped with PPSh-41s in large numbers, can generate overwhelming volumes of fire in close engagements. A Soviet squad with 6 PPSh-41s can put 90 rounds downrange in the first seconds of an ambush. A comparable German squad with 3 MP40s manages only 48 rounds. Winter 1941-42. Stalingrad, the urban warfare nightmare that defines the Eastern Front. Here, the PPSh-41's advantages over the MP40 become brutally obvious. Combat ranges collapse to 50 meters or less. Across rubble-filled streets, through shattered buildings, inside factories where visibility extends barely 20 feet. Accuracy becomes irrelevant. Volume of fire becomes everything. German soldiers discover that their 32-round MP40 magazines empty in approximately 3.5 seconds of continuous fire. The PPSh-41's 71-round drum lasts nearly 5 seconds. That difference seems trivial until you're clearing a room where hesitation means death. Soviet soldiers burst through doorways, drums blazing, overwhelming German defenders before they can reload. A German rifleman with a Kar 98K bolt action stands no chance. Even Germans with MP40s find themselves outgunned by the sheer magazine capacity. Oberstfreiter Hans Becker, 24th Panzer Division, wrote in his diary in November 1942, "The Russians come at us with those drum guns, firing continuously. Our MP40s run dry and we're fumbling with magazines while they're still shooting. I've started carrying 4 magazines in my coat rather than the standard 3. But it's still not enough." By December, Becker's unit was using captured PPSh-41s whenever they could find ammunition. The reliability difference manifests immediately. Stalingrad's dust, debris, and winter conditions jam weapons constantly. The MP40, with its machined precision parts and tight tolerances, requires regular cleaning to function properly. In Stalingrad's conditions, where water freezes inside canteens and soldiers go days without removing their gloves, proper weapon maintenance becomes impossible. MP40s jam, bolts stick, magazines fail to feed. The PPSh-41's crude stamped construction proves superior under these conditions. The loose tolerances that German engineers mock as sloppy allow the weapon to function when filled with dust and debris. The chrome-lined barrel resists corrosion that would destroy unlined MP40 barrels. The simple blowback operation has fewer parts to malfunction. Soviet soldiers literally bury PPSh-41s in snow, dig them out days later, shake them off, and fire immediately. Try that with an MP40 and you get a malfunction. German ordnance officers begin systematic testing of captured PPSh-41s in early 1942. Their reports, preserved in Wehrmacht archives, reveal grudging respect. One assessment notes, "The Soviet weapon demonstrates inferior manufacturing quality by German standards, yet achieves superior battlefield reliability through design simplicity. The stamped components, while aesthetically crude, prove more resistant to combat damage than machined parts. Magazine capacity provides tactical advantage in close combat that compensates for reduced accuracy." By mid-1942, German soldiers are actively seeking captured PPSh-41s. Wehrmacht units submit requests for Tokarev 7.62 by 25 mm ammunition to keep captured weapons operational. Some German armories begin converting captured PPSh-41s to fire 9 mm parabellum ammunition, allowing use of standard German ammunition. These conversions receive official Wehrmacht designation, MP41R, the R denoting Russisch or Russian origin. The conversion process reveals the PPSh-41's adaptability. German armorers replace the barrel and modify the bolt face to accept 9 mm. The weapon continues functioning reliably despite these field modifications. Try converting an MP40 to different ammunition and you face engineering challenges that require factory-level expertise. The Soviet weapon's simple design tolerates modifications that would destroy precision weapons. Production numbers tell the story of industrial warfare that German precision engineering cannot win. By 1942, Soviet factories evacuated to the Urals are producing PPSh-41s at rates German planners consider impossible. The Vyatsko-Polyansky machine-building plant produces 3,000 units daily. Factories in Tula, Izhevsk, and Moscow collectively output over 150,000 per month. Total Soviet PPSh-41 production reaches approximately 6 million units by war's end. Germany, meanwhile, struggles to produce 1 million MP40s across the entire war. The precision manufacturing the MP40 requires, machined receivers, carefully fitted components, quality control that rejects substandard parts, limits production even when factories operate at full capacity. German military planners recognize the problem but cannot solve it. They're committed to manufacturing philosophy that prioritizes quality over quantity, even when quantity determines victory. The economics are devastating. One MP40 costs 60 Reichsmarks and 60 labor hours. One PPSh-41 costs 5 rubles and 7.3 labor hours. For the same resources Germany spends producing one MP40, the Soviet Union produces approximately 10 PPSh-41s. This isn't just an economic calculation, it's the mathematics of defeat. German infantry squads face Soviet units where every second or third soldier carries a PPSh-41. German units, by contrast, issue MP40s primarily to squad leaders, vehicle crews, and specialists. The average German rifleman still carries a Kar 98K bolt-action. Kursk, July 1943. The largest tank battle in history also involves massive infantry combat where the PPSh-41's numerical superiority becomes decisive. Soviet infantry, supported by armor, advance across open ground where German defensive positions should slaughter them. But the PPSh-41 equipped infantry generate such overwhelming volumes of fire that German defenders cannot maintain effective resistance. When Soviet infantry reach German trenches, close-quarters combat favors the high-capacity drum magazines that allow continuous fire while Germans reload. A German after-action report from Panzergrenadier Division Grossdeutschland describes Soviet infantry tactics. Enemy assault troops advance in groups of 8 to 10 men, each equipped with automatic weapons firing from the hip. Our defensive fire, primarily from rifles and machine guns, fails to stop them before they close to grenade range. Once in the trenches, their drum magazines provide overwhelming firepower advantage. Our men with MP40s are outnumbered and outgunned. The Waffen-SS begins systematically equipping entire units with captured PPSh-41s. SS Division Totenkopf maintains a dedicated armory for captured Soviet weapons, with stockpiled Tokarev ammunition. SS photographs from 1943 to 44 show entire squads carrying PPSh-41s as standard equipment. This isn't battlefield scavenging, it's official unit policy. The elite SS, supposedly equipped with Germany's finest weapons, prefer Soviet Crude submachine guns over issued German equipment. German propaganda never acknowledges this reality. Newsreels continue showing heroic Wehrmacht soldiers with German weapons. But frontline photographs tell different stories. Images from the Eastern Front increasingly show German soldiers, identifiable by uniforms and helmets, carrying PPSh-41s. By 1944, these photographs become so common that intelligence analysts use them to identify which German units have seen heavy Eastern Front combat. The 7.62 by 25 mm Tokarev cartridge versus 9 by 19 mm Parabellum debate reveals another Soviet advantage German engineers never anticipated. The Tokarev round, designed in 1930, propels a 5.5-gram bullet at approximately 1,600 feet per second, significantly faster than the 9 mm Parabellum's 1,200 frames per second. The higher velocity means better penetration, especially against winter clothing, padded jackets, and light cover. German soldiers discover that PPSh-41 fire punches through wooden walls, thin metal, and winter gear that stops 9 mm rounds. At the ranges where submachine guns actually engage, 10 to 100 meters, the Tokarev round's flatter trajectory means less holdover and more intuitive aiming. The higher velocity also generates louder muzzle blast and more visible muzzle flash, But in combat these disadvantages become psychological weapons that intimidate enemies. The 71-round drum magazine becomes iconic and tactically decisive. German soldiers call it the mandolin because of its circular shape. Loading the drum is tedious, requiring several minutes and a special loading tool. Soviet soldiers often carry drums preloaded rather than trying to reload in combat. But once loaded, the drum provides a sustained fire capability that fundamentally changes infantry tactics. Consider a typical building clearing scenario. A German soldier with an MP40 enters with 32 rounds. He encounters 3 enemy soldiers. Even if he fires perfectly controlled bursts of 5 rounds each, he has ammunition for 6 targets. Assuming no misses, no suppression fire, no waste. A Soviet soldier with a PPSh-41 drum has 71 rounds. He can afford to spray entire rooms, suppress multiple positions, and maintain fire superiority throughout the engagement. The psychology alone is devastating. Defenders hear that continuous hammering and know the shooter isn't running empty anytime soon. German attempts to counter this advantage fail repeatedly. The Wehrmacht develops the MP40-44 Sturmgewehr, the world's first assault rifle, partly to provide German infantry with firepower comparable to PPSh-41, equipped Soviet units. But the Sturmgewehr enters production too late and in insufficient numbers. By the time German factories are producing meaningful quantities, Soviet forces are already driving toward Berlin with millions of PPSh-41s. The irony deepens. Germany's precision manufacturing philosophy, which seems like a strength in 1939, becomes a fatal weakness by 1943. German weapons require skilled machinists, quality steel, precision tooling, and time. As Allied bombing devastates German industry and skilled workers die on distant fronts, maintaining MP40 production becomes increasingly difficult. Quality control deteriorates. Late-war MP40s show rougher finishes, looser tolerances, and increased malfunction rates. Soviet industry, already tooled for crude mass production, experiences the opposite trajectory. Factories that started producing PPSh-41s with barely trained workers in 1941 become more efficient through 1945. Production quality improves as workers gain experience. By war's end, Soviet PPSh-41s are more reliable than German MP40s. A reversal that would have seemed impossible in 1941. German soldiers' letters and diaries from 1943 to 45 increasingly mention captured Soviet weapons as prized possessions. One Feldwebel wrote, "Got my hands on a Russian drum gun yesterday. The boys are jealous. It's ugly as sin, but it shoots when you pull the trigger, which is more than I can say for my issued MP." 1944. Operation Bagration. The Soviet summer offensive that destroys Army Group Center and kills or captures 450,000 German soldiers. Among the captured equipment inventories, Soviet intelligence officers note an unexpected pattern: thousands of PPSh-41s in German hands. Not just a few trophy weapons, entire German units equipped with Soviet submachine guns, complete with stockpiled ammunition and maintenance manuals hand-translated into German. Interrogation of German prisoners reveals the extent of PPSh-41 adoption. A captured Hauptmann from the 6th Infantry Division explains, "My company had 8 PPSh-41s among 32 men. We prioritized them for room clearing and close assault. The MP40s we had were fine weapons, but the Russians' drums gave us firepower we needed in buildings and villages. Battalion didn't officially authorize it, but they didn't stop us either." The unofficial nature of this equipment exchange creates bizarre situations. German soldiers carry Soviet weapons but need German ammunition, or they keep Tokarev ammunition but risk being mistaken for Soviet infiltrators. Some units paint white identification stripes on PPSh-41 stocks to prevent friendly fire. Others simply accept the risk. The weapon's advantages outweigh the danger of misidentification. The drum magazine's psychological impact extends beyond its capacity. Soviet infantry tactics emphasize aggressive fire and maneuver, advancing while shooting, suppressing defenders with continuous fire. The PPSh-41's drum enables this doctrine perfectly. A Soviet infantryman can advance 50 meters while firing short bursts, never needing to stop and reload. German soldiers with 32-round magazines must pause to change magazines, breaking momentum and exposing themselves to counterfire. German attempts to replicate the PPSh-41's advantages produced the MP3008, a desperate late-war submachine gun that borrows heavily from the British Sten but incorporates lessons learned from the PPSh-41. The MP3008 uses stamped steel construction and simplified manufacturing. But production begins only in 1945, far too late to matter. Only about 10,000 are produced before Germany's surrender. The weapon's existence is admission that Soviet design philosophy was correct all along. Urban combat in Budapest, Warsaw, and eventually Berlin proves the PPSh-41's final triumph. German defenders, fighting house to house in destroyed cities, discover that the Soviet weapon designed for exactly these conditions outperforms every German alternative. The MP40's elegant engineering means nothing when debris jams the action. The PPSh-41's crude stamped receiver flexes slightly under stress, clearing debris that would lock up precision weapons. Soviet assault groups clearing German-held buildings use tactics enabled by 71-round magazines. Kick in door, spray entire room with automatic fire, advance before defenders react. German defenders with 32-round MP40s can't sustain equivalent fire. They shoot 32 rounds, duck behind cover to reload, and get killed by the second Soviet soldier who's still firing. The reload time, perhaps 3 seconds for a trained soldier, becomes fatal hesitation in room-clearing operations. Waffen-SS units defending Berlin in April 1945 carry so many captured PPSh-41s that Soviet troops sometimes mistake them for friendly forces until Germans open fire. The weapon has transcended its origin, becoming simply the best submachine gun available regardless of which army issues it officially. Understanding why the PPSh-41 outperformed the MP40 requires examining the engineering philosophy behind each weapon. The MP40 represents German military thinking from an era when wars were won by professional armies using precision equipment. Every component is machined to exact specifications. The receiver is milled from steel billet, a time-consuming process that removes excess metal to create the final shape. The result is beautiful. Smooth surfaces, perfect fit between parts, and aesthetic appeal that pleases engineers and officers. But this precision creates vulnerability. Tight tolerances mean parts must fit exactly. Any deformation, wear, or debris causes malfunctions. The machined receiver is rigid, it cannot flex or accommodate stress without failing. In laboratory conditions, the MP40 performs flawlessly. In combat conditions where weapons are dropped, used as hammers, dragged through mud, and subjected to temperature extremes, precision becomes fragility. The PPSh-41's stamped construction seems primitive until you understand its advantages. Stamping presses form sheet metal into shape using tremendous force, faster than machining and requiring less skilled labor. The resulting parts have visible seam welds and rough finishes that offend precision-minded engineers. But stamped parts flex slightly under stress, absorbing impacts that would crack machined components. The loose tolerances, what German engineers call sloppiness, allow the weapon to function when filled with debris that would jam the MP40. Chrome lining the barrel represents another Soviet innovation born from pragmatism. Chrome lining protects against corrosion and extends barrel life significantly. The process adds cost and complexity, but Spagin understood that soldiers in combat cannot maintain weapons properly. Chrome lining means the PPSh-41 survives neglect that would destroy unlined barrels. German engineers, confident their soldiers would maintain weapons correctly, didn't prioritize this feature until late war when it was too late. The drum magazine's mechanical simplicity belies sophisticated design. The drum uses a clock spring mechanism that tensions as rounds are loaded, then feeds them into the weapon through centrifugal force and spring pressure. The design dates back to World War I-era weapons, proven but considered obsolete by 1940 standards. German engineers favored box magazines as more modern and efficient. They were right about efficiency. Box magazines are easier to load and more compact. But they underestimated the tactical value of capacity. The PPSh-41's rate of fire, 900 rounds per minute, was initially criticized as wasteful. Soviet field commanders worried about ammunition consumption. But combat experience proved that psychological impact and suppression value outweighed ammunition concerns. The weapon's distinctive sound, a rapid hammering clearly different from the MP40's slower cadence, became an audio signature that affected enemy morale. German soldiers could identify PPSh-41 fire immediately, and the sound meant Soviet infantry was close, aggressive, and well-armed. Weight distribution favors combat handling over static balance. The PPSh-41 weighs approximately 8 pounds empty, similar to the MP40. But the PPSh-41's wooden stock and forward-mounted drum place weight differently. The weapon points naturally, and the drum's weight helps control muzzle rise during automatic fire. The MP40's folding metal stock, while compact, provides less stable shooting platform and makes sustained automatic fire difficult to control. Post-war analysis by Western intelligence agencies reveals the full extent of German PPSh-41 adoption. U.S. Army intelligence examines captured German weapon stockpiles and discovers warehouses containing thousands of PPSh-41s, complete with German-language maintenance manuals and stockpiled Tokarev ammunition. Some weapons show German modifications, different stocks, added slings, identification markings. These aren't battlefield pickups, they're weapons that German units maintained and issued as standard equipment. British intelligence interviews German POWs extensively about equipment preferences. A consistent pattern emerges. German soldiers who'd fought on the Eastern Front preferred PPSh-41s over issued MP40s by margins exceeding 3-1. The reasons cited are identical: reliability, magazine capacity, and sustained firepower. Even soldiers who acknowledged the MP40's superior ergonomics and finish admitted they'd rather carry the Soviet weapon in combat. The statistical reality is damning for German engineering pride. Germany produced approximately 1.1 million MP40s between 1940 and 1945, impressive by traditional manufacturing standards but inadequate for total war. The Soviet Union produced over 6 million PPSh-41s in roughly the same time frame, plus millions more PPS-43s, a simplified PPSh-41 variant. The production ratio of roughly 6-1 meant German units faced Soviet infantry where automatic weapons were standard equipment, not specialized tools. Soviet partisan groups behind German lines relied heavily on PPSh-41s captured from Red Army units that retreated or were overrun in 1941-42. The weapon's durability meant PPSh-41s buried in forests for months could be retrieved, cleaned, and fired immediately. Partisan reports describe PPSh-41s pulled from muddy hiding spots, dried out, and used the same day. No other weapon of the era could tolerate such abuse. The PPSh-41's post-war service life demonstrates its fundamental soundness. While Germany's MP40 disappeared from service almost immediately after 1945, replaced by American weapons in West Germany and Soviet weapons in East Germany, the PPSh-41 continued fighting for decades. Soviet forces used them through the 1960s. Chinese copies served into the 1980s. North Korean forces carried them during the Korean War. Vietnamese forces used them throughout the Vietnam War. The weapon designed in 1941 remained relevant 40 years later. Modern weapons collectors and historians who fire both weapons reach consistent conclusions. The MP40 is pleasant to shoot. Smooth action, good ergonomics, manageable recoil. It's a refined weapon that feels sophisticated in your hands. The PPSh-41 is rougher, cruder action, heavier trigger pull, more muzzle blast. But it works every time. Drop it in sand, submerge it in water, freeze it overnight, the PPSh-41 keeps firing. The MP40 requires care. This fundamental difference, refinement versus reliability, determined which weapon soldiers preferred when their lives depended on it. German soldiers captured in 1945 carrying PPSh-41s weren't making propaganda statements or collecting trophies. They were making battlefield pragmatic decisions based on years of combat experience. The crude Soviet weapons simply worked better under conditions where wars are actually fought. The lesson extends beyond these two weapons. German military culture emphasized engineering excellence, precision manufacturing, and sophisticated design. These values produced tanks, aircraft, and weapons that impressed observers and performed excellently under ideal conditions. But the Soviet Union built weapons designed for total war fought by conscript armies under the worst possible conditions. When those philosophies collided on the Eastern Front, Soviet pragmatism proved superior to German sophistication. May 1945. Berlin surrenders. Soviet forces occupy the Reichstag with PPSh-41s that have fought continuously since 1941. German defenders in the final bunkers carry a mixture of weapons. Some have MP40s, but many have captured Soviet submachine guns. In the ruins of Hitler's capital, the weapon designed by Georgy Shpagin in desperate circumstances 4 years earlier has outlasted the Thousand-Year Reich. The PPSh-41's triumph wasn't about superior engineering in the traditional sense. The MP40 was better made, more precisely manufactured, and more pleasant to handle. But the PPSh-41 was designed for reality. Mass production under industrial collapse, operation by soldiers with minimal training, functionality under conditions where maintenance is impossible and reliability is everything. Shpagin understood that wars are won by weapons that work when everything else has failed. German soldiers who abandoned their MP40s for captured PPSh-41s weren't rejecting German engineering. They were accepting battlefield truth. In combat, sustained firepower beats ergonomics. Magazine capacity beats compact design. Reliability beats refinement. These weren't theoretical calculations, they were lessons learned through experience that cost lives when ignored. The MP40 versus PPSh-41 story reveals the danger of designing weapons for how you think war should be fought rather than how it's actually fought. German military planners envisioned professional soldiers maintaining sophisticated equipment in controlled conditions. They designed the MP40 for that imagined war. Soviet planners, having experienced the chaos of industrial warfare in World War I and the Russian Civil War, designed for worst-case scenarios. Untrained conscripts, destroyed infrastructure, minimal support. They designed the PPSh-41 for reality. Modern militaries continue learning this lesson. Advanced weapons systems that require extensive support infrastructure fail when that infrastructure collapses. Precision equipment designed for professional soldiers malfunctions when operated by exhausted troops under stress. The weapons that endure are those designed with understanding that combat conditions degrade everything: training, maintenance, supply, and morale. The PPSh-41 endured because Shpagin designed it to be unkillable. Stamped steel that could flex without breaking. Chrome lining that resisted corrosion from neglect. Loose tolerances that let debris pass through rather than jamming the action. A drum magazine that provided capacity no box magazine could match. These weren't sophisticated features, they were simple solutions to fundamental problems. When the Wehrmacht soldiers abandoned their precision-engineered MP40s to fight with crude Soviet PPSh-41s, they weren't betraying their country. They were honoring it by making battlefield pragmatic choices that kept them alive. The Soviet weapon was ugly, rough, and unsophisticated. It was also reliable, powerful, and effective, which meant everything when survival depended on the weapon in your hands. The crude weapon won. The sophisticated weapon lost. Sometimes engineering excellence means building something simple that never fails rather than something complex that works perfectly until it doesn't. The German soldiers carrying PPSh-41s through Berlin's ruins understood that truth. Their officers and engineers, unfortunately, learned it too late.